Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Global Marketing Leaders. We are here streaming in from San Francisco Bay Area and very excited to have someone with me on the show today who comes with a very different set of experience from most of the guests that you usually host. Medical devices, hardcore hardware, medical stuff. Pretty complex for me to understand, honestly, but very excited to have Roshni Datta on the show today. Roshni is the global head of brand and marketing for Varian, now Siemens Healthineers, pretty much the market leaders for all the cancer radiation devices, for the simplest way I could put it in there, but they do a lot of science and a lot of physics and a lot of innovation, particularly. But Roshni doesn't come from a core marketing background. She comes from a very exciting set of career uh, all throughout the world, I would say. Roshni, very excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you for the warm introduction.
Thank you so much. And probably, I think we usually, before how we structure these conversations are, we go with Roshni as a person, Roshni as a professional, and then Roshni as an AI native human being. And then we have the fun part where we get to know more the fun side of you. We have a set of rapid fire questions, etc. But I think we'd love to begin with knowing you as a person. Where do you grow up? How did you did you plan a career in marketing? I'm pretty sure you're not. Because you went into sales, etc. I saw the profile that you had, but love to know about where do you grow up, how do you go to school, what do you study, and then how do you all land up to Varian?
Thank you. That's quite a loaded question. So maybe, and it's a lot. I'd love to share, my background and where I came from. So I grew up in Kolkata, India, east of India. And interestingly enough, based on a career conversation that I had with my dad around the time when I was probably in, standard 10, like right before the board exams and so on, was kind of made me think that I needed to study economics.
Okay.
And I was not very keen on engineering for some reason. I was not keen on I love medicine.
See where the world has brought you
Yeah.
within engineers. But
So,
okay.
exactly, right in the midst of engineers. But so I started in economics.
Right.
And during my economics study at Presidency College in Kolkata, I kind of decided I was going to do an MBA afterwards. And when I was going through my MBA, the first, I had the good fortune of working with a lot of FMCG marketeers. And some of the learnings I received from my seniors was, if you do want a career in marketing, do not ever begin with a marketing role. It's very important to begin with a sales role, to be very grounded, understand the challenges at a grassroots level, understand truly what salespeople who are actually carrying the voice of marketers go through on a day-to-day basis, how customer interactions shape.
That's very important.
And interestingly, when I got my first job offer, I kind of kept rejecting everything that was marketing. And till I landed a really good sales offer. So yes, so that's how I began my career in sales. But then, of course, ultimately my goal was to be in marketing. So I kept, an eye out for that. And as soon as there was a great role, I moved and so on and so forth.
Amazing. And love to know more about the journey also you've had, right? I mean, you come in from an era, of course, we were chatting before the show, right? You come in from an era where, and I'm not dating you honestly, but you come in from an era where those analog phones that we all did, you sold probably I can say you were a part of the team that actually made incoming calls free for India, right? And I come from India, right? So we usually know that how big the challenge was back then to introducing internet on analog phones back then.
Right.
To altogether making this career shift into medical devices. It's such a niche category and you've stayed at it. Like you've gone across the world in multiple companies and stayed in that medical devices category. I'd love to understand what does your professional journey entail in different parts of the career as well. What work did you do? Great things that could have been improvised. Everything you'd love to share about it. I think let's begin with that.
So I don't want to start telling the full story because I think it's going to take hours. But some snippets of it which do stand out. I think the first thing you mentioned about was the transfer from telecom or a non-healthcare to a highly specialized technical health industry. The first thing which I learned was learning agility. Like, what was it that I learned that I could bring forward to healthcare?
Right.
Not everything, of course.
Right.
And of course, not nothing either. So what was it? And the main thing was being able to understand the product and the solution and the problems that we were solving at the very, very core.
Cool.
That's the most critical thing, I think. And then that skill set and the ability to be able to listen carefully to your customers, and in case of healthcare, also patients, and also to your engineers or the product development team who are developing these products, who are in it, kind of listening to them as to why, what was the motivation behind developing such a such product, and so on and so forth. Listening to all of these helps kind of help you become a better marketer, I feel. I think that has been at the core of my kind of transitions and journeys and roles across also different areas of healthcare. So, initially, of course, we try to club healthcare into one uniform, large mass.
Like that.
Yes, it's so specialized because you have, medtechs, you have pharma, you have, of course, direct to patient, etc., etc. The nuances are different. The fundamentals might be the same, but the nuances are quite different. In terms of roles, of course, I've done roles in product management, product marketing, sales management, you name it, pricing, brand. So it's been quite a bit of journey. But I think my biggest learning came from people management.
Interesting. And I'd love to also maybe dive deeper into this medical devices journey, right? You've been at multiple companies in your entire career span, probably some of the largest ones in this category, right? In all different careers, right? How do you teach marketing to these innovators slash engineers at the end of it? And because you're in a company that is guided from the principle, like, see, for example, a company like Pepper, we are guided on the principles of sales and marketing. Like, we live, breathe, eat, sleep, the same thing, right? But over there, right, you're actually driving in to the eat, sleep, breathe of innovation, right? And engineering. How does marketing take a place? Because now you're doing two kinds of marketing. One, you're doing marketing for the outside world, but you're also doing a marketing for an inside world, particularly on teaching them the importance of what marketing as an organization will play in that case. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what your like personal diaries of sorts in these cases.
You're 100% right. It's actually was internal marketing and external marketing. And a fun story that I have with, about working with engineers and techies and across the healthcare space is they usually are really good in their left brain activities. So the moment they think of marketing, they get really excited because that's probably the only time, sorry for saying that, but probably the only time they are using the right brain a lot, gets activated. So they get really excited. So they are very invested. However, the understanding about what marketing truly is not very prevalent, of course, because to them it's, oh, you just write brochures, you put up a pretty picture. Why is the picture not pink? I love pink. Those are some of the conversations. And why does it need to? What do you mean by it needs to be on brand? The logo is there. What else? So those are, of course, the fun things. But in general, I guess what is the key part of it is while we are developing technology, those are truly breakthrough sometimes. From an engineering marvel standpoint, from a solving a physics equation standpoint, genuinely, it's wow-worthy, I would say. And that it's natural for engineers and even non-engineers who can actually understand the quantum of the problem that we've solved to get very excited. But that's where the problem lies, because then we become inward focused. Then we are not looking at the customer problem or the patient problem that we are truly trying to solve. So there, I think every single time we have the conversation, we need to bring it back to the fact that whether it's B2B, B2C, whether we are speaking to an industry or a company in the end, at the end of the day, we're speaking to an individual.
Right.
Who's a human.
It's a B2H.
Yes.
Business to human.
Yes, it's exactly B2H. So whether it's a patient, whether it's a customer, it's still a human. And what better way to connect with a human other than emotion?
Emotions, yeah.
So at the core of the technology, there needs to be some emotion. And at the core of the technology or the solution that we are solving, that problem needs to connect to us at a personal level. Actually speaking, now, currently that I'm in cancer care, it's not such it's a very, because that cancer patient could be me, could be a loved one, could be anyone. Yeah. So it is personal for us. And in fact, all the engineers, all the team members, everyone who works on it, it's personal for them too. So it kind of makes it easier, I would say, in some ways, because it's such a an emotional and a heavy topic. But that's a daily, I would say, daily task, almost to keep reminding them we are not here to talk science. We are here to talk about the problem that we are solving and the emotions that solving evokes. So it's always about hope, always about positivity, not the emotions that the problem brings. But
And I'd even point you to another point, right? I mean, in most of these hardware companies, I've seen sales and marketing being one role. And usually it happens as sales and marketing role because ideally it becomes a distribution business. This is how the traditional FMCG also operated, because it's more the channel sales that happen after a point. It's like a retail marketing in some sense, right? Now, in your case, because I asked you these questions right before we chatted, right? I was very surprised to actually see marketing and brand as a separate function. How do you ideally differentiate? This is also for the audience base, right? Because this general consensus of sales and marketing is weird.
right.
And love to understand what's the actual difference for companies like these between sales and marketing. Where are lines drawn clearly? Where are lines blurry? And I'm pretty sure there are places where there's either of these things, but love to hear from your and the perspective.
Okay. Like you mentioned earlier, I was fortunate to be with some large companies. So they all had pretty set processes and pretty distinct teams.
Right.
So for me personally, it was never a big challenge. Even for example, non-healthcare industries that I worked with, other companies, it was pretty well differentiated as to who's marketing or who's sales. However, the key point of differentiation, I would say, or rather, let's say not differentiation so much, but where it gets confusing sometimes or lines get blurry, are probably in the operationalizing of it. To give you an example, if it's a really large country or market, you will have separate teams dedicated. A sales manager, sales person, account person, also marketing person. In smaller countries, that salesperson is pretty much the CEO. So that salesperson will then have to think of, say, programs, or think of communication, or think of maybe they are participating in an event. Think of how do they manage that event and communications around that event. So then that person now is wearing multiple hats. Right. So in those cases, yes, that salesperson becomes a semi-marketing person.
Yeah.
But by and large, in these large companies, especially, like, pretty much the roles are very distinct. Also, the other thing for large companies, brand is extremely critical and important because it's healthcare also.
Right.
And that if that brand is not built, if that brand is not grounded and founded on trust, you can't sell a healthcare product.
I want to also kind of point out this category as a whole, right? This is a very highly regulated category.
Yes.
I mean, everything has to go through compliance.
Yes.
And if not one, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 layers of compliance, right?
That's correct.
I want to ask you this question about, it is so technical. You don't come from a medical background, right? And I'm pretty sure not everyone who works on your team comes from medical background. I mean, of course, to hire a designer, you wouldn't care about if they came from medical background, then you cared about they know design, right?
Right.
And of course, there's an ideal state of the world which never exists that everyone should know everything. How do you, one, go about hiring people? And a follow up on that is, how do you go about upskilling people internally? Like, what does a ramp up process internal look like? Because you are in a category, a lot of other categories are similar. How do you ramp people up is a big challenge in general in this case. So, one, hiring, and second, ramping up people. Love to hear your perspectives on both of them.
Another great question. So, hiring, I have a personal philosophy, which is kind of a bit different, which is I hire based on culture first. I look at the individuals. Of course, the first entry point with regards to CVs, etc., where you kind of are going to screen. There, it's more of the hard skills and the similar experiences and so on. After that, the interview phase, when I'm meeting that person, I look for a cultural match. I look for an ethical and integrity match. I look for a ways of working match. Like, is this person like a wheeler dealer? Is this person trying to get things done with shortcuts? Or is this person truly authentic, genuine, is willing to put in the hard work? After that screening, honestly, I feel once you have those basic core skills, it doesn't really matter. Reason being because I'm then confident that that person will have the learning agility and the interest and the appetite and will put the hard work behind learning something new. Now that brings me to your second question of
Ramping up people.
Ramping up. In some of the companies I've seen, they have fantastic onboarding training and education.
Right.
And literally classroom programs. Of course, it's an investment that the company makes. Classroom programs which take that individual out of their regular day-to-day job, they put them in classrooms all day, all night,
Right.
to learn about the products, the industry, the anatomy, whatever else. Increasingly, it's becoming more difficult because it's a huge cost for companies. It's not possible for the companies to do this for all employees. So, of course, a lot of this training has moved from classroom to online, but some companies do invest in that, like a lot of training programs.
Especially if you come from India, I mean, in India, the TCS and Infosys have proven that, like, they have schools literally, they run like institutes. Like,
Yes. So it's onboarding. So it all depends on which company you join as your first company. It's a bit of luck probably, where if you've joined a company that does truly invest and believe in investing in training of the people, you already have a really good foundation in healthcare, and because the human anatomy is not changing,
yeah.
medical is not changing, the terminologies do not change. So you get that. The second part is how open and willing are you to really go beyond your day-to-day work, like you said, a designer, to actually go meet people, talk to colleagues, meet customers, meet patients. And are you really proactive enough to find that time to do it? Because you might not have that learning capability to go do scientific
Right.
learnings. That's fine. But sometimes talking to a colleague, you learn a lot.
Yeah.
So, like for example, some of the best learnings I've been fortunate to be in companies where you have medical affairs, leaders who are actually practicing physicians.
Nice. And
Who
they
are
teach.
they teach. They are published physicians who are actually on the forefront of research, forefront of clinical ability. Just hearing them talk and just having a casual conversation with them, you learn so much.
And I'd even ask you this way, right? I mean, you're also, and you brought me to the point of having published physicians, etc., in the company, right? You're also in the business of community right now.
Right.
I mean, especially all these medical devices, because you're effectively selling to medical practitioners in some sense or the other, right? Of course, I mean, you might be selling to the CEOs of hospitals and the procurement heads as well. But at the end of it, the only person over there who understands truly the value of this device as a whole, or maybe any hardware or infrastructure or software as a whole, is the practitioner themselves, right? What are modes to community in this? I mean, I'm just trying to also understand in this case, because a big part of your marketing thing, or maybe one of the goals that you might be chasing, is the community angle, right? I'm hoping that's something you usually try to build up over a period of time, and if not in this current role, but in previous roles as well, you must see enough effect of that. I would call it a network effect in some sense in that case, but I'd love to hear from you, because there's also an inspiration to a lot of parallel industries. See, why I'm asking you this question is, the only playbooks of marketing in hardware that exists in the world right now, that is so open to everyone, are all of your peripheral devices marketing playbooks, from your Dells to your HPs of the world, etc., right? But this high ticket size marketing playbook for an hardware company, I have personally not seen it, and I'm pretty sure I've read a lot of it, but I've not seen enough. I'd love to hear from you on that.
That is an excellent question. And you're giving me an idea to probably write up your playbook.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, because that doesn't exist when I've not seen
Right.
enough companies come up with something like this. I know all of them are like subpar to what I've understood. They might be doing a great job at business. I'm not saying that is a question mark, but I'm just saying people don't know it enough. Like,
Yes.
people, like, for example, for someone to lean into that category now, like for a new marketer, this is the one of the last categories they'll pick up to enter as a job, right? Because they don't know what works, what doesn't, right? So maybe like you can add more on that.
Yes.
You have spent good amount of years in this category.
You're so right. There's no book, there's no playbook to this. And after searching, I've also come to because I would have loved to learn from some playbooks, but none. So you create your own playbook. You're right. In terms of community building, is an extremely important part of our work. For example, it doesn't happen often enough for two reasons. A, it's like you mentioned earlier, our industry is extremely regulated. With those regulations, oftentimes marketers and companies are afraid to even explore community, because community necessarily means, does it need to be moderated? Does it not need to be moderated? If it is not moderated and it's completely user generated, how do you ensure that no non-compliant or off-label or abusive activities are happening there, and so on and so forth? And us being in healthcare and being so highly regulated, it becomes even more important. What if tens of hundreds of users are discussing a non approved way of patient treatment, for example, using your device. Suddenly, because you're hosting that platform, it suddenly becomes your company's voice. So those are some of the daily challenges we think of. Having said that, the areas where it has become most successful, and I know for some examples, I don't want to quote those names of companies, but they have been super successful in building these type of user user-led communities where the focus is on best practice sharing among a clinician to clinician, peer to peer, and these communities have largely been actually built offline.
Yeah.
So, because there is no way for scams, for example.
Right.
There is no way for an intruder to go
Ambiguous,
in.
yeah.
Yes. However, the content that's generated out of those offline meetings can very well and be repurposed online, and there needs to be better ways to disseminate that content, for example. Or increasingly, again, online offline meetings, physical in-person meetings are more expensive logistically, sometimes do not even go through compliance approvals, right? So how do you then bring this whole community online? This is a problem that we are still grappling with. We are still trying to figure that out. One thing which we have been very successful in doing is actually bringing a community together towards solving a single scientific problem. Then it becomes oriented towards case study presentations, paper presentations by these clinicians. And then the content generated out of that, we can use it in marketing, because what ends up happening is clinician X from Australia says, I've saved 50% time using this technique, this product. Someone else says, I've saved 70% time, right? So using this technique, but a different product, and so on and so forth. So we can cull that out and create a lot of material.
Understood.
And a lot of talking points and a lot of proof points and claims. And if it's significant enough, we also are lucky enough to have a good research funding arm where we could potentially, give it for further development and research. So
actually, that brings me to another point. Very important one is your content marketing.
Mm.
And I would want to point out, what does content marketing in an environment like this looks like? Like, a lot of people watching this are content marketers. We have no clue what it looks like. We know there is something called as the medical technical documentation, medical technical content stuff,
Right.
etc. But like, that's not core marketing. Of course, that's a kind of marketing for you guys, but that's not the marketing that the world knows ideally, right? I mean, I would ask you, what does content marketing for you look like?
This is another huge ocean of opportunity, I would say, which we have not explored enough. We don't do enough of this. Simple case in point, which I explained. We have hundreds and thousands of, let's say, publications out there, sometimes supported by us,
Right.
sometimes support just in the medical community, sometimes maybe by our competition, which we can actually use for further content marketing.
Right.
We don't do enough of that. For two reasons. Again, probably we don't have the right tools and technology to do that enough at scale.
At scale, yeah.
Individually, yes, we do enough of that. Do we produce 3 pieces of content similar to that in a year? Of course. Do we produce 300? No. That's where I'd like to get, to that 300, right?
Scale.
So
Also, because the regulation, it's become a slow process because the system is not conditioned for scale ideally.
Yes.
And it will get slowly there ideally, but yeah.
To this point, something that I read or heard sometime back resonated with me a lot. So this was somewhere I read that the future of healthcare communications is not going to be built on data. It's going to be built on stories. So what we try to do through content is, because the core content that we get is all data, right? It's this percentage improvement with this probability, etc. How do we make that data come alive? Through real stories of patients or through case studies with hospitals. And we have some things through, like you mentioned about playbooks. One of the things I mean, it's not really a playbook, but these kind of examples, which are amazing. I know there's one example that I loved was the recent, the IBM Every Second Counts campaign.
I saw
that was so fantastic. And that's also something that can be translated to healthcare a lot, because you are magnifying the problem through the lens of that one individual who's facing that. Oh my God, like imagine if that happens, in healthcare, something fails that day, what happens, right? So those kind of things I think will help a lot, like some sort of examples that we can borrow from other industries where no one wants to talk about the problem. It's too boring. right? It's like, who wants to talk about which technology and which department of the hospital, is functioning slower today versus something else? And it's not very exciting. But what is truly meaningful is how that patient reacts after getting that treatment and coming out of the treatment room. How an infant cancer patient goes out and says, I want to do that MRI again.
Interesting.
Because you're building an experience around the treatment. So it goes beyond, for us, actually, it goes beyond just communication. It goes into how do you build an experience during that treatment delivery. And it's kind of more of that 360 experience marketing rather than just communications.
Communication marketing. Interesting. Maybe before we move to the last part of the conversation, I'd love to ask you more about the AI parts of it. I know this industry is still growing on the marketing side. AI has come in as SaaS tools, I would say,
Right.
but it's still some way to get it in a AI native as a whole. But I'd love to understand from you, how are you using AI right now on your day-to-day life as well as in workflows? I'm pretty sure the larger systems don't allow you to use that given the compliance, etc., data going out, etc., all of that. But I'm not asking the tools that you use, but I'm asking in general, what do you use it for? Right. And what are top 3 use cases maybe for you guys?
So the top 3 use cases for us would be definitely content generation, like at scale. And the second one would probably be in a whole lot of digital campaign content generation, because again, the core content remains the same. How do we again develop content? Because it takes up a whole lot of resources for us. As a healthcare company, traditionally, we don't have a whole bunch of creative writers and designers and so on. It's a very lean resource. So every single time, for example, we have to create a simple creative for a digital campaign, hours and hours of work for that creative designer is going. If those are processes that I can just simply hand over to AI tools, that will be amazing. Because then we can scale up. Then we can, right now, we don't feel it because we are limited by what we observe. But if those limitations were not there, maybe we would have explored new boundaries. So to answer your question, we see the maximum use of AI in terms of content writing and also visual design as well. There's a huge component, which is, of course, medical regulatory strategy. So I would say for us in the foreseeable future, no matter how advanced we get in terms of AI tools,
that one part
we have to have a human in the loop.
I think that is true for almost everywhere. I mean, it's not just for you guys, it's for everywhere. I mean, of course, I would love to believe, and I heard someone again repeating something that Sam Altman had told earlier about the current version of LLMs we use are mostly the stupidest version of LLMs we use. And of course, the world has to get there.
Yes.
But in industries where the stakes are high, like in your case, the stakes are too high. It's lives of humans, right? At the end of it, you won't be able to replace the human. So it's always going to be, it's never going to be AI or human. It's going to be AI plus human. That's how the future is going to look like.
Yes.
Probably, right? But that's fantastic. I think thanks so much, Roshni, for this. I think we move to the last part of the conversation where we have like a rapid fire round with you, get to know you, the fun side of you, I would say. 6 seconds for every question. Whatever that comes on top of mind, just blurt it out. So we'll quickly go on the count of 1, 2, and 3. We'll begin. So Roshni, what would you have done? Like, what would you have been doing if not marketing and sales?
A gym instructor.
Oh wow! Are you a gym freak?
I love strength training.
Amazing. That's nice. You've been doing for a while.
A while. Yeah.
Right? Amazing. Second one, favorite place to go for a vacation?
Italy.
Italy?
Yes.
What part of Italy?
Tuscany, I would say, and Amalfi Coast. So a bit of the greens, a bit of the blues.
Those amazing, nice. Comfort food?
Maggie.
Nice. I think that's the more Indian
That's the
side
Indian
of
in me.
you, right? I think even for me, sometimes it's Maggie, right? I get why the Maggie. Fourth one for you would be what are the top 3 tabs that are always open on your laptop?
That is interesting. These days, interestingly enough, it's OpenAI ChatGPT.
Nice.
As one tab. It's always my email tab, even though I have it
And
on the
except for your
phone all the time.
emails.
Okay, except for my emails. So ChatGPT for sure. General Google search. because that's always there. What else, really?
See, that's a marketer in you speaking. What do you look? What do you do the entire day? I mean, is it just like emails?
I would say yes. There's just so much of. I I think on a regular work day, it's pretty much impossible for us to have anything open because the days are
Days
so
are so
busy.
busy.
On a weekend, I would say I almost always have some sort of travel site open because I'm always planning the next
Planning next
vacation
vacation.
and dreaming of the next vacation, whether I get it or not.
Not makes
Yeah.
sense. That's nice. Last one for you is, what's your favorite brand and what's the brand that you like a lot but they don't do their marketing well?
I do love Google as a
Google
brand.
as a brand.
I am not so sure of that. They don't need to do marketing, I guess. It's just too omnipresent.
And any other brand that
Mm.
you really know and you like them, but like you think they can do the marketing well?
I think they do their marketing well, but I think I really love Mercedes. And I don't see enough of their marketing. So if they were not such an old, established, known brand, and I'm not even sure whether they are that relevant to this younger and newer generations as it has been to slightly,
Mercedes, you find your next customer out phase. So
Great, do tell.
do tell. Yeah, I tell you, you got to reach out to her. She'll buy it if you get the marketing right.
Yeah.
But
I think-
awesome. This is good. Thank you so much, Roshni, for this. Really appreciate you doing this, spending the time all the way here. You're one of the first few people who are actually speaking about this category of business. Not had a lot of them coming from this side of the world, but you have an interesting career and all the very best for everything you do ahead. And yeah, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much. This was lovely chatting with you.
Of course.